You don't have to go to Disney World and spend thousands of dollars to have a worthwhile experience with a child very close to home. I wanted to celebrate trade, how we benefit from a relationship with people around the world who make our lives better. And hopefully we do the same thing for them.
Welcome to the Think Big Podcast, the world's first problem-solving podcast for entrepreneurs, where we discuss real business problems and provide real solutions that drive real growth. Today's guest, Mark Staples, is a lifelong photojournalist, writer, editor, and publicist who is about to release his fourth children's book in July entitled Pedro's Delivery, about the life of a Filipino seafarer who delivers goods that get to our store shelves. Mark's challenge is figuring out how to affordably and effectively market his children's books. Mark believes many authors struggle with the same dilemma because they're better at writing books than selling them, but I'm going to challenge that assumption.
It's an honor to be with you. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. So let's start first by I want to understand. Obviously you're an entrepreneur, been an entrepreneur for a while, but what got you interested in writing books in the first place?
During the pandemic, I wrote a memoir for family, 42,000 words. That might be considered interminable, but it was for family. I never expected to publish it.
Okay.
I have a daughter who teaches creative writing and publishing at Washington and Lee in Southwest Virginia. She read the memoir, and in a conversation I well remember over her dining room table, I asked her, Beth, do you see anything in here that might make a book? Because I
Mhm.
really thought about writing a book, but I was beginning to think about it.
Right.
And she said, well, Dad, you've been to places people have never visited. Many people have never been there. I think you have a book in writing a memoir about your experiences from visiting those 6 places in Africa and Asia. So the
Okay.
first book, before I went into the process of doing children's books. So it's a historical memoir that started me, and I was 78 at the time. I never
Okay.
writing a book, but Beth encouraged me, and that got me started.
So I understand writing the book. I actually similar experiences where I always, have been taught or told by others that I needed to write a book because I had so much knowledge and I really just didn't know where to start. So I became an author very late in life as well. I just released my first book this past June, but I I know that I can write, but I'm used to writing for professors. So I know that the average person doesn't want to read what I write. And I was able to resolve that by, hiring a ghostwriter to work with me who has a better capture in the English language than I do. And so I think we were able to create something very nice. So I get the wanting to write a book, and books are usually about our story. So all of that makes sense. Why specifically did you focus on a children's book versus a book for adults?
So my second book was a children's book. I used to camp
Mhm.
up in Bucks County. I developed a greater love and appreciation for nature.
Okay.
So I wrote a bunch of children's stories that I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to publish.
Okay.
One was about a beaver who rescues his neighborhood from a flash flood danger.
Mhm.
And I wanted to write a book that helped children understand that it's important to figure out what their gifts are and how best to use them for other people. That's
Okay.
what Johnson Beaver does in this book. Apart from that, in the early part of going back to about 2003, I got interested in long-term flood recovery.
Okay.
Bucks County, and after Katrina, Lynn, my wife, and I worked in Mississippi to help people begin long-term recovery from really pretty severe disasters that affected their home. In some instances, they lost their photographs. Everything
Mm.
mattered to them. So Bronson tells the story of a beaver, but beyond that, there is a part of the book that gives people who are adult readers to their children and children ideas to think about being better prepared for natural.
Okay.
And so the book is really not only a good story for children, but educational for both them and adults. That was
Okay.
very quickly. I did two others. Lucy's Loot really is about an adventure between me and my granddaughter when she was 8. The
Mhm.
essential message for that book is you don't have to take a child to Disney World to have a meaningful life chapter with a child. It can be very close to home,
Right.
a little creative. So the third book, I think you've already mentioned. So they've been fun to do. It's maybe not a successful business at this point. I've enjoyed doing them. It's a hobby that matters to me.
So tell us a little bit about the book that's about to be released in July, Pedro's Delivery.
For 10 years, I had Homeland Security credentials to work in the Port of Philadelphia for Seamen's Church Institute,
Hmm.
calling on ships and being hospitable to visiting seafarers.
Okay.
When I started doing that, I met a lot of different kinds of people. A lot of them were Filipinos, a place where I had visited in the 1980s,
Hmm.
gotten to really appreciate Filipino people. And so when I got onto the ships and began to see them, we would have conversations. They would generally be surprised that someone like me had visited the Philippines in the first place.
Hmm.
So we had good conversations, and it was just great. I have many really beautiful memories. So the other thing that mattered to me was that I wanted to tell a story about how we need each other.
Hmm.
Collaborating globally is what trade is all about.
Right.
So it was natural to write a story that I had actually observed about a ship that came to Philadelphia from the Ivory Coast, brimming full of cocoa beans
Right.
that had become chocolate that kids could enjoy when they went to the store.
Okay. Okay.
So that's how that came about. And then I was lucky to find a publisher. It was really kind of dumb luck. Someone in Alignable recommended an author, recommended
Hmm.
I approach this publisher in Toronto, Canada, Ontario, about this book. And they told me first, we've never published children's books, but we're thinking about it. We like
Okay.
your manuscript. Maybe this can work out. So after a series of conversations, we got into a process with them, and the book is coming out in July. I have a wonderful
Okay.
reader from Arizona. I'm really excited about that process, and I'm thinking it might be a better way to distribute a children's book, a way I haven't had the advantage of before.
Okay. Okay. So this new book will be published by an external publisher,
Yes,
correct? And prior books were not. You were self-published. Is that correct?
80,
Okay. Okay.
80% of the books, I'm told, in America are self-published.
Okay. Okay.
7,000 titles a day. It's a rather
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, did you have any concerns about, having gone the self-publishing route before? Were there any concerns that you had about going the publishing route?
not once Lynn and I met these folks and talked to them in detail. And it was also exciting, by the way.
Right.
It's going to be the first book to launch an initiative called Granum Kids. Granum in Latin means seeds.
Okay.
And the story happened to fit into their mission, I think, for children's education, basically to build upon the notion of we need each other. We have
Right. Right.
collaborating. So they were thrilled, and we became thrilled as well at the opportunities.
Oh, so, um, the reason you're here is, you're saying that it's been difficult to market your books up to this point, and I'm assuming you're anticipating that you will have less issues with the new book because it's being backed by a publisher versus self-publishing. Would I be correct in making that assumption?
Well, I think there's a couple of points to emphasize, Jeff. First of all, I know even with a publisher,
Mhm.
our ability to get this book into catalogs more noticed than it would have been without them. I'm
Right.
still going to be the person who's doing a large share of the marketing.
Mhm.
Uh, I taught marketing at one time, which is it's like the story of the shoemaker who has no shoes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I've taught it, but at my advancing age, what I do well is networking. I get speaking engagements all the time.
Mhm.
Got some this week that I hadn't expected. I've been around long enough now to be better noticed in my little part of the world.
Right.
I think it's going to be an advantage, but it's not going to remove me from the importance of doing my own part of the work. So,
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about, the problem. I mean, particularly for someone listening that is a budding author, or maybe they're already an author struggling with the same issue. What are some of the common obstacles that self-published authors have to getting their books noticed?
well, I think one of the obstacles is, as I mentioned, there are so many titles published every day.
Hmm.
So there's huge competition. I've discovered in approaching bookstores, for example, that the ones that are most interested are the ones that are close to where I live.
Yeah.
So that's certainly an example of an obstacle. The other thing is just working steadily at getting better known. And hopefully, so I always say to people, write what you know.
Right.
I've written about my experiences with natural disasters
Hmm.
and my visits to the port of Philadelphia to see seafarers as life experience that I think, after thinking about it, is worthy of writing something. I think the messages are something people will appreciate, which is just a simple story of
Yeah.
experiences with a grandchild when
Okay.
8 years old. The main point is you don't have to go to Disney World and spend the thousands of dollars to have a worthwhile experience with a child very close to home. And
Right. Right.
that's what appealed to readers about that. So I've hoped that what the content says matters to my readers.
Yeah.
It's not only what I am in a position to say, it's hopefully it resonates with them. So I've taken a kind of marketing approach. Why would a reader want to read about life lessons learned from people of other cultures, for example? Well, because those lessons are helpful in a polarized world. So that part I've kind of covered. It's finding the energy at my age and with my chronic illness issue to do what makes it more visible to people. And I have to remember, my first book just came out 2 years ago.
Right.
Not as if I'm selling books that are 10 years old or something like that. So
Well,
it's coming along, but the obstacles are considerable. Where do I place my energy best to make a difference? And networking is a ongoing process, as I know you've found yourself.
yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things you're already doing, 'cause I always advise entrepreneurs, take the time to figure out what you're passionate about and build a business around your passion. So as an author, and you already mentioned writing about things you've experienced and things you
Yes.
know, then I think the issue becomes, and I'm curious with your book that's about to be released. I know it's about real life experiences, but are you fictionalizing, are you trying to tell the story, but not trying to divulge real people's names and all that kind of stuff? So it's more, you're more fictionalizing what, real life experiences, or are you telling the story as it was?
So, Jeff, I appreciate that question. In the 10 years I visited ships, that most or many of the seafarers that come with crews to Philadelphia
Okay.
are Filipino folks whom
Yeah.
I born 3 decades earlier. And I I listened to their stories,
Hmm.
and I got to write about them for Seamen's Church Institute. But what did they experience at sea? What are their biggest travails? One of them is a naval-bodied seaman, who Pedro is.
Right.
It has to be away from home for 14 months at a time.
Hmm.
The advantage, he gets fed on the ship, he has a place to stay. He's making more money than he could when he's at home. So Pedro is kind of a combination of all the stories I heard over those 10 years,
Okay.
including being at sea when there are perilous storms or when they're being attacked by pirates, which is
Okay.
frightening. They don't have weapons on this ship except
Yeah.
for, so I kind of collected these stories and combined them into a fictional character that's
Hmm.
back. And I was fortunate enough to be writing about cocoa beans. I had been on a ship that delivered the cocoa beans to from the Ivory Coast in 2012
Hmm.
and knew what that process had become,
Right.
where the beans went to from the ship. And so the book was kind of easy to do that way. Yeah. So we have chocolatiers in uh, in Pennsylvania in some abundance. Hershey is the biggest name I think people think of.
Right.
It's interesting to note that timing is really helpful. I was concerned about Philadelphia's role in receiving cocoa beans compared to the time that I visited the ship. And in my research, I discovered Philadelphia was the largest importer of cocoa beans in 2025, 5 million bags.
Yeah. You told me that at lunch before, and that shocked me.
Yeah,
I was not aware of that. I know that we have Hershey's here, but that just shocked me.
yeah. I was grateful because it means my book is still relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, right. Yeah, yeah. So, I do want to talk about your new book, but this is a theme around children's books in general, your children's books specifically. So, because always want entrepreneurs to differentiate themselves in some way, shape, or form, and the easiest way to do it is to find a niche that you can dominate, right? And finding that, usually you're identifying something that no one else is doing. You're finding customers that aren't being served, or you're finding customers that are being served but they're not happy with the service they're getting, and then you're differentiating with cost, speed, or the overall uh, breadth of service that you're providing, right? So, um, I'm just curious so obviously there are lots of children's books being written, lots of children's books writers. So that's not what differentiates you. However, what I'm thinking is that the reason why you're telling the stories you're telling for children the way you're telling them may be what's different. And so could you talk a little bit about that? Why are you telling the stories in the way? What do you want kids to get out of this?
So particularly, I guess, well, with all three of my children's books, there's really a lesson in there for adults who read to their children.
Hmm.
Pedro's a little different because Pedro is an early reader book. That
Okay.
books were children's picture books for, and in all likelihood, they're being read by an adult to a child.
Okay.
I think I'll give you Pedro as an example. I did research before I decided to really try to publish the book
Right.
to see if any book had been written that I could discover previously about a seafarer.
Okay. Okay.
And what I discovered was I couldn't find one. I
Wow.
found books, Scholastic did a beautiful book on the whole discipline of seafaring.
Right.
Wonderful book. It talks about the different ships and all of that, but it doesn't really talk about the human side of seafaring.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
this is kind of a different book. And it was a story I had the advantage of being able to tell it because I witnessed it for 10 years. But did find books about ships, cargo
Yeah.
ships, different kinds of ships. So I found rather fortunately that I was in a position to write a story that appears to me to be unique.
Yeah. Yeah. So would I be correct in it sounds like the books that you found were talking about the process of seafaring, right? So there's lots of explanations being given for how this is being done, but not talking about the people that are doing it.
Yeah, and Jeff, another point, there is a very good adult book out there. Can't remember the author's name at the moment, but the title is 90% of Everything. It's
Okay.
an adult book that talks about the 90% of everything is 90% of everything gets to us by water. Now, I think that's probably still true. It's a really interesting book. I've read it, but that's why I didn't do an adult book. I wanted children
Okay.
to get a glimpse of trade, of something they value. And people just, I don't think they think much about how something gets to their store shelves. They're just
Okay.
that it's there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this story is the human side of someone who does a certain amount of sacrifice to bring stuff to us from other people.
Okay.
And many times in today's marketplace, we're not producing these things ourselves.
Right.
Today, fertilizer is under a great deal of discussion because of what's going on in the Middle East. Fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz. Farmers
Okay.
need fertilizer to grow their crops this spring.
Right.
So it's that kind of thing. I wanted to celebrate trade. What we benefit from a relationship with people around the world who make our lives better. And hopefully we do the same thing for them by trading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, as we're talking about this, I am like, adults could use this knowledge, but I think you're addressing it the right way in that adults would already know this if they had learned it as children. So I think that that's part of why you're doing what you're doing. And I may be incorrect, but go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, no. Well, I'm doing the best I can. And the children's market is, I think, important so that they read a story about someone like Pedro. They can't, I think they won't be able to read it anywhere else.
Right.
With the,
Okay.
why I got a publisher. I think something clicked with them about this particular story. It was dumb luck, though. And I owe it to you, Jeff. I'm sorry, I'm making a little aside because you're the one who connected me with Alignable. And
Okay.
Alignable connected me with an author who recommended that I approach this publisher. And the rest is history. I mean, I have to thank you.
Well, you're being way too kind. Thank you for thanking me, but yeah, you're being way too kind. So I'm sure in the stratosphere of all the things you've accomplished with your book, so what I've contributed has been minutia, but I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. So let's take so a child they get read your new book or any of your books. Um, if you had the opportunity to talk to that child, whoever they may be, what would make you feel good talking to them and hearing from them about what they took from, the experience of having been read that book? What do you want them to learn?
Well, I think, first of all, I've been fortunate in several instances to travel to a preschool and read. I read Bronson to three different grades or three different classes, I guess, at a large church preschool, for example. And I didn't get necessarily feedback from them because they hadn't had time to really think about it very much.
Right.
But I think one thing I've discovered is that they really liked Bronson as a character. I had one reaction from a child who actually happens to be being homeschooled,
Yeah.
son of the owners of the campground that we once frequented,
Okay.
who read the book while I was talking with his mother. And I saw him about 5 minutes later, and he said, "You know, what I like about this book is how all the animals work together."
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
Wow.
that was certainly one of the points of the book. But the main points were discerning your gifts and learning something about being better prepared or being aware of what to do in the event of disasters, which is described at the end of the book. And by the way, I had the blessing with that book of creating an audio book
Right.
with where Mayor Hannah, who's a hummingbird,
Hmm.
someone you might think of as not very influential in nature,
Yeah.
but happens to be a hummingbird. And this woman, Julia Frank, the coordinates Lutheran disaster response
Right.
in the whole region and is influential across the country.
Okay.
What's left of FEMA to try to help people recover. And she's a big part of the audiobook. There's also two flood survivors who are in the cast.
Okay. Okay.
So that's a different way of reading or hearing the book that we're almost finished with that audiobook. It's taken a little bit. No, that audiobook is finished. I'm sorry. There's another one we're working on, but that's beside the point.
Well,
Uh,
I don't want to leave that story too quickly. So that when you were reading that book and got that feedback from that child, what grade was that, and how
um,
were the kids?
so there were the first grade was kids 3 and 4.
Okay.
I think next grade was age 5. 6. I think the oldest was 8 in 3 different classes.
Okay. Okay.
So it's basically ages 3 to 8, but they were in different classes. So I read the book.
Okay. Okay. And the particular child that gave you the feedback of what they took from the book was the animals working together. How old do you think that child was?
That surprised me, Jeff. The child was 11 years old,
Okay.
older than I thought was the target audience for the book.
Yeah.
Um, and that taught me something that you can't presuppose necessarily who's going to get value out of reading a book like this. Uh, but the this may amuse you.
Yeah.
Funniest response I got from a child that I read to in the 3 preschool classes,
Yep.
in the middle of reading about Bronson, a boy in the back row called out, "What happened to your hair?" It had nothing whatsoever to do with what I was reading,
Right.
but it gave me the idea. I was thinking of writing a book about alopecia, right?
Okay. Okay.
I have a doctor friend who's a good illustrator,
Yeah.
but there have already been scores, not scores. There have been many books. I research at least 6
Yeah.
have been written about that subject. So I'm not sure that I can write something of it that would be an advantage. But it's children are so, predisposed to saying what's on their mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it startled me. And
Yeah.
I have a good answer for it.
Yeah. Well,
We both thought,
it's interesting you say 11 because I mentioned I just released my first book. Well, the introduction to the book was actually written by an entrepreneur in New Orleans, and she was 11 years old at the time she wrote the
I remember
introduction,
you telling me,
right? And she's an author herself, right? So, and I met her through Alignable also. So I met her mother initially, and the mother introduced me to the daughter, and she actually wanted to sit in. I was teaching on Lineable at the time, and the daughter wanted to. The mother asked if her daughter could sit in on one of the sessions, and I said, "Sure, absolutely." And I didn't know how old the daughter was, so I said, it's something they asked me, told me to ask how old the daughter was. So I said, "How old is your daughter?" And she said, 11. I was like, "Okay, you know." Won't she be in school at that? While I'm teaching? She said, "No, no, no. She'll be done from school." And so hey, anyone's welcome to come in. And the interesting thing was, the next session I'm teaching, at the end of the session, when I always have a certain format where I ask a question and answer, and I make that actually the longest part of when I teach. And so when I got to the Q&A part of the session, this little girl was just peppering me with questions. And by the time the session was over, I reached out to her mother and I said, the interesting thing it was your daughter's questions were more articulate than most of the adults in the room, and I just got me curious. And then she told me her daughter had written a book with a couple of her classmates, and so the very next session, the daughter came again. She was actually the first person in the room. She was there like 30 minutes before the session even started, and she was wanted to ask me questions about it was also how to market her book. And so I gave her some ideas, and actually the session was about forming strategic alliances. And the week after that, I'm doing the next session. She comes in and she says, "Mr. Ken, I did exactly what you told me to do." I said, I don't recall giving you any personal advice. What did you do? And she says, I reached out to the largest speaking, I guess it was the largest place where, someone could speak publicly. So, she went to this auditorium or whatever. And she said, oh, I talked to some man there and he said I could do a book signing and give a speech. And then her mother is chiming in. She's like, you weren't just talking to some man. And she's like, well, who was I talking to? She's that was the owner of the place. But she did, it was just another person to her, you know. And again, during the session that she's revealing all of this, I'm telling the adults in the room, I'm like, this is why I love working with children. Children don't have, they don't have a filter. They, they say what whatever comes to mind, they're going to say it. If you give them direction, they're going to do it. They're not going to question you. Adults, you give them the same information, and it's like, well, I don't know. Oh, what's going to happen if and it's like, Jesus Christ, would you just try this? you know? So anyway,
So most of
sorry
the
to get off on that rant.
feedback I've gotten has been from adults who have read the book to a grandchild or a child, and through their filter,
Hmm.
they have talked to me about the reaction that the children have had.
Okay.
I also, quick aside, a couple weeks ago, I spoke at a church, and one of the attendees was I mean, being a good listener is a big part of marketing anything. This woman who was in attendance was a children's librarian,
Right.
Pottstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So she said, "Well, Mark, I really love the illustrations, and I like the font size of the type and the way it's laid out. It's very easy to read." Now,
Okay.
that's really good feedback. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm grateful that she felt that way,
Right.
but that was kind of like test marking a reception of someone who's familiar with the children's audience saying that what I mean, fortunately did was we laid the book out in
Okay.
an attractive way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm always listening, to see how I might use the feedback to help sell the book.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to dive into let's start solving this problem. So and you have an advantage over a lot of people in that you mentioned you actually taught marketing, right? So most people aren't going to have that in their bag of tricks. But uh, when I talk about solving problems and particularly as it relates to marketing, there are really three things three definitive things entrepreneurs can do to market better or sell better. So we'll go through these one at a time. But first is, and this is something you've already done, is forming strategic alliances with much larger organizations, right? Because what you want to do is you want to get out of the traditional what we do as entrepreneurs. We're selling, right? We're selling our product or services to unsuspecting potential customers who don't know why we're trying to sell to them. So they don't know whether we've taken the time to actually discovered what their problems are and we've aligned solutions with their problems in order to provide them the most help, or we're just, you know, being overly compensated to market something, and that's why we're pushing it on them. So that's the process of selling is one. It's incredibly difficult, and it's difficult because the general public we inherently don't trust salespeople, right? So you have to overcome that obstacle, and that's why push selling is not it's not really effective. The much more effective way to sell is through what's called pull selling, right? So when you form strategic alliances with larger organizations who don't view you as a competitor, right? You can leverage their significant marketing dollars to identify pre-qualified leads that they then feed to you. You do close, you do the bulk of the work, and you find a way to split revenue amicably. Let's talk about that. And again, you've done this when you moved from self-publisher to moving to a publishing deal. You've in essence formed a strategic alliance with a large publishing agency who is going to promote on your behalf versus you having to do it all yourself, right? So when we look at forming strategic alliances, there are always four quadrants of potential people that we could align with, right? So there are what are called complementers, companies, organizations that have products and services that complement ours. You have your suppliers, you have your customers, and you have competitors, right? So, but you just want to focus on competitors that are so much larger than you that they don't view you as a competitor, right? And what these larger organizations, the benefit they get from working with you as a small business person is you're nimble, right? You don't have to ask people permission to do anything. You're not boggled down with bureaucracy like a large organization. So you can do things really efficiently that large organizations can't without going through layers of management, right? So um, and ideally, so you've got this one alliance, but I tell people, one, you need to form alliances with companies in all four of those quadrants, but then you need to form as many alliances as you can. You shouldn't restrict it to one. I mean, if you can get 100 organizations marketing on your behalf, the better off you are. So again, you talked briefly about the story of leveraging Alignable to connect with your publisher. So I guess I'll ask the question of, you know, why haven't you tried to create more of these types of strategic alliances? Because I think you're seeing that this potentially could work in a big way for you.
Yeah. So I can tell you briefly what I've done, and I certainly need to explore this further. I've had three independent sponsors
Hmm.
that read my books and who want to see them in the hands of more children.
Right.
So, in a very limited way compared to what I think you're describing, I've had three sets of people who've purchased my book in bulk and who want to see it read. And so they paid for the books and distributed them to various groups, soccer league, preschools, and in a more limited way, just to folks in our church.
Hmm.
With the new book, Pedro, I have a very interesting thing happening in that I've been invited to speak to the North American Maritime Ministry Association, which consists of chaplains from all over North America.
Okay.
And there's going to be about 200 people at this conference. The operator, the proprietor, or the CEO of Siemens Church Institute is a real ally. So as soon as she knows how the book is going to be priced, she wants to get a grant to give the book to everyone who comes to the conference.
Okay. Okay.
An example of an alliance that I'm trying to find. I also, with Bronson, which is about flood recovery, there are in the Commonwealth, connected with Julia Frank, who I mentioned earlier, probably about 25 folks who are in this practice of helping people recover from natural disasters.
Hmm.
I was able to send them an invitation to buy the book, and I got a couple of responses. But there are some instances where I'm trying to do alliances, and I don't really know. I get a monthly report from Amazon about what's been sold. It's not immediately evident to me who bought the book,
Right.
so I can't tell how successful those forays have been. But yeah, I am naturally trying to network.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's an ongoing struggle, you know.
Yeah.
And then some things just happen by chance. My latest speaking engagement came out of a chance conversation at a birthday party last Saturday. I had
Hmm.
85-year-old friend. This man so far has given me two speaking engagements in 1 week where I
Wow.
normally sell books. So they're
Okay.
full-time alliances,
Yeah.
right? But they matter, I think. And they help me
Yeah.
get known. And then someone will say, and I know this happened at least once, I heard this guy, maybe you want to invite him.
Yeah.
It's simple. But of course, what I want to do is get big things to happen, sell
Yeah.
200 time or something. Well, it's a day by day thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I need to think more. I think what you've taught me is I need to think more about beyond what I'm normally thinking about.
right, right. Yeah.
Think frontier thing and look for opportunities I may not have thought of.
Well, referrals work, so that piece of it you have down.
Word of mouth, word of mouth is the best kind of promotion. I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
But
yeah,
so
looking
I
forward
think
to.
of three distinct groups that particularly when you're talking about children's books that you'd want to get through to. One is parents, two is educators, and three is librarians. Right. So so
Bookstore.
talk about what you've attempted to do to connect with organizations or how anything where you've got congregations of parents, the PTA, things like that, educators, school districts, schools, school systems, and librarians, large library systems, things like that. Have you attempted to do anything with any of these three segments?
So they're on my radar screen. In particular, I have a sponsor from Swarthmore who wants to set me up with a new bookstore and um, uh, potentially a library in the community. And I just, I haven't done it yet. I mean,
Yeah.
but I have some opportunities like that. The Elmwood Park Zoo, which is near where we live, has a really nice store. I have it on my radar screen to visit them and see if they want to make the book available on consignment. Haven't done it yet,
Okay. Okay.
but they're rather small types of alliances. And my wife, by the way, of 50, almost 59 years, is a great support for me in this. She's saying, well, why haven't you done this? Well, it's a one day at a time thing. I'm very curious to see how the publishing relationship is going to impact this new book.
Okay. Okay. Well, congratulations on 59 years of marriage.
I don't
You
have
know,
done it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, it's that's a huge accomplishment. I made it to 28 before my wife passed, and my parents, just lost my dad this past October, but they were together, I think, 74 years. So yeah, there's something to be said about finding the right person. So with particularly with children's books, I mean, I know your books are illustrated, and so what have you tried in terms of and I know I particularly not am not great with social media, so you may or may not be, you're probably better than me at it. But when I think about particular platforms that are really conducive to photos, it's Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest, right? So have you explored any of those three platforms and
So,
showing just your pictures from the books on any of those platforms?
so my primary excursions into social media have been LinkedIn.
Okay.
A technical advisor who helped me to post the first two children's books I did. And we have on our radar screen to explore more about. I do limited advertising on Amazon. Don't have a big budget. I'm on a fixed income.
Right.
The question I have there is, what is the best? What are the most affordable and efficient ways to advertise and promote using social media, which is not something I have terrific gifts for. I
Right.
took when I had my author's photos taken for Pedro, I posted and got considerable responses
Hmm.
from my friends on Facebook who were intrigued that at the age of 80, I managed to climb 12 stories to the bridge of a ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, to be honest with you. It was
Right.
practically a killer. But yeah, so I'm a little bit. In fact, very quickly, the reason I stopped teaching marketing
Hmm.
at the time, social media was just coming on the scene, and
Okay.
I didn't have the expertise.
Right.
Add that to my curriculum, so I gracefully, after 10 years with LaSalle's nonprofit center, I gracefully went in and I said, I think I ought to bow out of this. And they said, no, we think you ought to keep doing it. We'll get someone else to do the social,
right.
which was burgeoning. And I said, nah, I think at that age, I was 70. I was thinking maybe it's
Okay.
for somebody else. I didn't want to start getting reviews from people that, because I'd always gotten good reviews. Didn't want to start getting reviews from people who said, this guy doesn't really know much about social media.
Right, right.
Would have been right.
Okay. I'm guilty of that as well, so,
So, but
yeah,
LinkedIn has been helpful. I get invitations to connect with LinkedIn folks all the time. They either want to help me with the editing process or printing a book, or they're from all over the world. It's
okay.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah,
But in a way, I'm not sure I find that exchange. I'm not sure I can benefit them.
yeah,
And they're not something, they're not folks I just am desperate to connect with.
yeah,
It's an experiment usually.
yeah, yeah. Well, first, I want you to stop that adult thinking. So you don't know whether you can benefit them. Well, you can't if you don't ask. So take that out of your mind.
Yep.
Just change it to I don't know whether I can benefit them,
Right.
but I'm going to ask anyway. And you never know. I mean, someone who may not think you can benefit them, but you make the offer. There are things that you may not know about them, and they may say, "Oh my God, you're the person I've been looking for all my life."
Yeah. When I speak to groups, I know this may not be a question you want to ask, but I do speak to groups and I say to them, and I will say this, by the way, I've already written my speech for August.
Yeah,
I say to them, don't think you're too old to do something. You may have a message you need to convey. Think about it. Think about who your listeners or readers could be. I encourage people to write memoirs about their lives because what they don't write down is going to be lost.
yeah, yeah,
And that's a big part of my message. I'll use that again May 23rd. I have my next
yeah,
speech. But uh, so if you know that may be a people may be afraid, oh, I'm too old, I can't do this. I don't know what I want to say. I think the maritime ministry chaplains have a message to convey because so
yeah.
many people know nothing about international trade as
Right.
it affects them personally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I would expand that message to say you're never too old or too young, right? To tell your story.
the 11-year-old you talked
Yeah,
about.
yeah. I mean, when you were talking about reading to classrooms of children, and a child, 11-year-old, telling you that what they got out of the book was how all the animals work together. I mean,
Yeah,
that's wisdom beyond the age of 11, right? To pick that up, and it's probably a message that a lot of adults need to hear. It's like we get into life, and we get so distracted and removed from what we were originally taught that we become different people, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and to hear that message that children have to hearing the things that, so that we are brought back to the way we looked at the world when we were young. I think it can be a very positive thing. And again, with age, I mean, the beauty of ages is hopefully you've gained a lot of wisdom. You definitely had lots of experiences, so you have a lot to share, right? So
yeah, and for example, with the Lucy book, I mean, we have a wonderful neighbor here in the building. Very quickly, we have a wide variety of people in our building, all different backgrounds, faiths, traditions. One of the gentlemen who buys all my books,
mhm,
African American, he shares them with his grandchildren. And he was the one who first said to me, Mark, because I asked him to comment about it. I asked him to give me, and it's on my website. And he said, Mark, this is a story about a simple experience that paid dividends for you and a child.
right,
That's where the thought emerged. You don't have to go to Disney World with a child to have a big time experience. It
yeah,
can be simple. And he imparted wisdom, thought about it that frankly had not crystallized in my own mind when he wrote it. But I'm grateful for what he said because it helped me.
right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to come back to that to that person because there's a way that I think you can market through that connection and that information, right? But the last thing that, in terms of alliances, is that I want to talk about was is called people that are called micro influencers, right? So when I think particularly about people that blog about parenting, right? So our parenting bloggers, right? I don't know whether you've reached out to people in that category, but if you have, can you talk briefly about that?
Yeah, no, that's a blank slate for me.
Okay.
So blogging, I've done it on my website,
Mhm.
stories, but boy, that's a world. Now, my friend John Taylor, who's my technical advisor, we might be able to talk about that.
Okay, okay.
But that's a good suggestion. I mean, I don't even have the foggiest idea. People have told me, teachers, they need to know about your books.
Right.
I think that's true.
Yeah,
Most of the teachers I know are my age,
yeah, yeah,
so I have to give more thought to that. And same thing of librarians, I think. There's a whole set of folks out there that I haven't connected with through blogging or any other way.
yeah. Well, the beauty of these influencers is they have large audiences, right? And so if they're blogging about things like parenting that, obviously you want to access parents, they've got an audience of potential consumers for your books. And so, you know, connecting with them, forming strategic alliances with them are ways to get your book promoted to a broader audience than you might have access to currently, right? So, yeah.
That's really helpful. That's a place that I need to focus on. And the other,
Okay.
again, a quick aside, I've been so busy writing and producing the books that I keep telling myself, well, I can really get to marketing them when I'm done with all of these production considerations which do preoccupy me,
Mhm.
especially now with Pedro and the publisher. We have interactions all the time.
Okay.
It tracks me from the marketing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I just have to, maybe you can help me with this. I just have to live long enough. I, j- I live long enough to do you know,
Yeah, well, if you were in my family, I might be able to help you with that. But because my grandfather lived till he was 110. My great grandfather lived till he was 105. My dad passed at 98. My mother's currently about to turn 95 next month. So yeah, we have longevity on both sides of the family. But uh, you know,
we have
uh, uh,
genes.
yeah, 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 yeah. But I couldn't explain to you why we live as long as we live. So I'm not sure
Well,
I can help.
congratulations. Get more done.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to migrate from. So we've talked about one solution is forming strategic alliances, right? So you could form strategic alliances with, as I said, complementers, suppliers, customers, and competitors. And you should form as many alliances as you can with as many people in each of those quadrants. The more alliances you have, the better off you're going to be. But another very effective way of marketing, excuse me, I talked earlier about we don't trust salespeople. We as humans don't trust salespeople because we don't understand their motivation for selling to us in the first place. And so, one way you can overcome that obstacle when peers sell to each other, they don't have that. I mean, and to explain this would be like you seeing your next door neighbor drive home in a new car that you liked, and then you going over to your next door neighbor and asking questions about the car that you saw that they just purchased. You'll ask all the questions that you want to get answers to that help you figure out, do I want to buy this car myself, right? Without the pressure of a salesperson. You're expecting, and usually you're going to get honest answers. So by the time, if after talking to the neighbor, you decide to go to a dealership and actually buy that car, I always tell, entrepreneurs, when you find out someone's been referred to you because they've talked to their peer, they've already asked all the questions they need to decide whether they want to purchase. When they show up on your door, just hand them a contract, because if you talk too long, you're going to talk your way out of a sale, right? So anyway, you talked about a neighbor in your building, that African American gentleman who's bought all of your books, right? So, and I always talk about one of the ways we can improve how we market or sell is by transforming customers into evangelists, right? So you're providing the highest level of customer service to the customers you get, so that they fall in love with you, right? It's the classic. I'll use this when I teach. I'll use the example of, you're a parent and you have a daughter, and your daughter decides she wants to participate in Girl Scouts. And now it's Girl Scout cookie selling time, and she comes home with boxes of cookies and her sign up sheet, and I always ask people, who's the first box of cookies your daughter is going to sell to? And I don't even need them to answer the question. I answer it for them. It's her parents. Why? Because they have a relationship with their daughter. First of all, they have a vested interest in seeing her succeed, and they don't want her to fail. So they would actually buy all of the cookies, if they're able to do that. But the other thing we see, particularly when we worked somewhere in corporate environment, there's always, during Girl Scout cookie selling time, some parent who comes into the office with the sign up sheet to buy cookies, for their daughter. So I think most of the cookies get sold because of the parent, right? So, but what's happened when you break that down is the parent has become an evangelist for the daughter, right? Because of the relationship. And so where I transfer that with entrepreneurship is, I tell entrepreneurs, you want to become the child, and your customer, you want to transform them into thinking they're your parent, so that they have this vested interest in your success, don't want to see you fail, and will buy everything you sell for the duration of life of your business and refer you to their peers, right? So when you talk about this neighbor who's purchased all your books, and I know you already said you had one conversation with him, but have you sat down with him and kind of walked him through all of the, when if you were a consumer looking at purchasing one of or all of your books, uh, getting yourself in that frame of mind where what are all the questions you'd ask? Well, if I have an opportunity to talk to someone who's bought all my books, I'd want to know why did you do that? Why did you buy even one of my books, much less all of my books? Um, you know, what did you get out of the books? And after you bought one, what made you want to buy the second? And after you bought the second, what made you want to buy the third? And after you know, um, how are you using these books? What are you getting out of it? Because all of this information is so helpful for you, because the people you're trying to reach have these same questions. You have someone who can give you all the answers to these questions.
So Harold Williams has become a really dear friend, but we've lived here 9 years. I think the reason why, I mean, he tells me the reason why he initially wanted to buy my books was because he's become a dear friend and he wanted,
Hmm.
when he read the books, I think he valued so far messages from all three of the books that I've written.
Right.
And I have a few people like that. I mentioned earlier the sponsors who, it's because we have a relationship that
Right.
and they do freely tell me. They tell people about my books. I
Yeah.
give business cards to give to other people and that sort of thing. And I have no question that that must help. I one of the problems I have, one of the things that it would be good if I did, I think, is do what I've done with Harold, which is ask him for feedback about
Yeah.
the book, because what he wrote was incredible. I don't do that enough. There's a woman that was at that same party on last Saturday that I talked
Hmm.
who said, "Mark, I've been promoting your books everywhere I can."
Okay.
So I have ambassadors out there who, because they had a relationship with me, they bought the book. Then when they read what I wrote, they found it of value. If I hadn't found it of value, it probably would have ended there. But in a number of instances, I mean, I really do have ambassadors.
Yeah.
They keep telling me we can't wait to see Pedro. We
Yeah. Yeah.
so um, I probably just haven't done that discipline as far in advance as I could have. In turn, suggested, do you have anybody? Now, in the instance of Julia Frank, the disaster response coordinator, she gave me names of people to write to.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
the problem is I'm not sure how many people bought the book. I I I have weaknesses in my strategy, but
Yeah.
I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it. I guess I could say I'm not doing it well enough or completely enough, but I have to give myself a pat on the back too, because I'm kind of like Lynn and I are two people. We massage our relationships really well. And we get, for example, there's stores here who invite me when a book comes out,
Okay.
find books. I have book signing events.
Okay.
And it's pretty low level, but it's really nice. I mean, I think it helps to be a good networker. It helps to be customer oriented. It helps to care about the people that want to promote you. But this is really helpful because I have to explore that more deeply.
Well, another thing I would do with, so when you talk about, going to, this party recently that you're at, and one of the women at the party was saying that she's been going out of her way promoting your book. The question that I would ask is, well, first of all, I would be very, very thankful, and I'm sure you already thanked her for that. But I would then ask, is there anything that I can do to to make your life easier as it relates to you marketing my book? Do you need a couple free copies? Or do you need me to come somewhere and speak? What is it? Do you want to have the authority to give people my phone number or email address so that, if they express an interest, they can, reach out to me immediately so that, you know, the excitement of you talking to them at a particular time doesn't dwindle before, they actually get to me, something like that.
That's really good. That's really good. I'll be focusing on that.
Okay. Okay. And then kind of the last, so we talked about alliances, we talked about transforming customers into evangelists to market on your behalf, which is an easier way. I always tell people that, that the best sales force money can't buy is a happy customer, right?
Yeah, that
If you have happy customers, you want to leverage that as much as possible. But the last area is forming your A team, right? So people that are you're surrounded with who can help as well, whether they be co-writers or whoever you can. As an author, you've got so many people. You've got illustrators, you've got co-writers potentially, you've got editors, you've got your printer. So there are all these people that are part of the publishing ecosystem that you should consider as an author part of your A team, right? And so leverage them to market on your behalf as well, I think is something that can be done. So again, I don't know what you've thought about doing as it relates to the people that surround you as an author who can help. But talk about that for a little while if you can.
yeah. So that's another area that I can explore more deeply. I'm a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and I haven't plumbed that as much as I could.
Mhm.
Uh, I know enough to do these things. It's trying to prioritize.
Right, right.
So my A team consists, first of all, of my wife.
Yep,
Um, so how am I going to put this? There was a time, I think, when she thought that we're investing too much in these books and not getting enough in return.
right.
She turned a corner when I got the publisher, I
Okay, okay.
think. When she goes around, I listen to her talking about these stories, and I'm amazed at how supportive she is.
Yeah.
Apologize.
Oh, no problem.
So she's number one on the 18. Sponsors are part of the 18
Hmm.
that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I keep, leaning on them
Hmm.
if something new comes out, and they're very good. But I can see ways talking to you where I can expand upon
Right.
that 18. And what the good news for me is that the books seem to be highly positively reviewed.
Hmm.
It's not, now maybe people are being nice to me.
Yeah.
They're not saying, I read this and I really didn't think it was worth my time.
Right.
I'm not getting any sense of that. So you know, I think what's helpful about what you're recommending is I need to, lean a little harder on people, not in a negative way, but in a way where I try to support them in promoting word of mouth of my books.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, in terms of an A team, I think there are two distinct groups that you could potentially reach out to. So one is there is a website called Fiverr, Fiverr.com. So Fiverr is really just people trying to they'll do virtually anything, but there are people all over the world that are just additional resources that can be used to help and entrepreneurs in any given way. Going to the website and then typing in something like book marketing, right? To find resources who you could hire, and these are incredibly inexpensive resources. I mean, the projects typically, they might say, "Hey, we'll help market your book for $5 or $10." It's not we're not talking thousands of dollars. Um,
I,
um,
I've been afraid of is a
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. It's a way to find very inexpensive resources, but I think when
great job.
so if you just go to that and you find someone who says they're going to do book marketing, and kind of leave it up to them, the results are probably going to be pretty skewed, and not in a positive way. But I think when you go to a site like that and you find a resource, um, because of our conversation, I think you can come up with a a scope of an engagement, right? That you could say, hey, I need someone to help me market my book. I need someone to specifically find organizations that you know parent organizations, right? And market directly to those parent organizations on my behalf. And that's the scope of the engagement. And then see what kind of prices you get for people that could do that. And then you'll also be able to vet them to see, hey, have you actually done this before? For specifically marketed your services to parent organizations, right? As a way, as you're vetting these resources. But that may be one way that, again, you know, you're older, got some health issues, so you know that you can't do everything, but a way to get everything done is to rely on other people. So Fiverr might be a resource to be able to do that.
Yeah. Another conversation I need to have is with, so when my book became appealing to the publisher,
Hmm.
they were in the process of thinking about launching a children's initiative. They hired a children's book editor, Adrian Quintana, who
Okay.
has an agency called Pink Umbrella Books. It's all
Yep.
one of their divisions. It does marketing for authors. And she and I have a very good relationship. So I'm thinking that one conversation I need to have is, do you want to help me with these other books that I have?
Right.
And I suspect she will want to do that and
Hmm.
see what's involved with that. What's going
Right.
to be. But I like the Fiverr connection is great.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
fact, I've gotten so LinkedIn, I probably have 6 people who
Okay.
to help me market my books.
Right.
I just before July and this next book comes out, I've said, I've got to think about this some more when I
Yeah.
can. But this is good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And as I said, I would narrow the scope of the engagement as a way to vet the person you end up hiring. So ask them only to do one thing. Hey, identify parent organizations that you can market to. Show me evidence you've done this before, which for someone else, but
That's
then only market to parent organizations, right? If they're successful, then you can expand the engagement. I said, okay, now in addition to parent organizations, I want you to start focusing on school systems and educators, right? And organizations that educators are involved in, and let's market to them. And if that becomes successful, okay, now I want you to expand to working with librarian organizations that librarians are part of, right? And you can continue to expand the scope of this engagement, but you're doing it based on their demonstrating success marketing to the first group that you've and the second and the third groups that you've had to market to. So,
that's so helpful to me. Thank you.
oh, no problem. So I think another way that you can help, I always there's like this hierarchy of hiring that I tell entrepreneurs to go through. I said, so when you start a business, there are a million things that you have to do every day as a business owner, and unfortunately, only some of those things you actually are good at and like to do. But those are the things you are good at and like to do are the things that you need to spend all of your time doing. Everything else you need to outsource immediately. You know, you'll never get good at doing stuff that you don't like to do and aren't good at, no matter how much training you get. And so, for whatever task you identify that you don't like and aren't good at, you'll be able to find someone who just loves it. And you'll never get as good as them, no matter how much training you get. So don't even try. Just outsource it immediately. And so, and people will say, "Oh, I don't have any money." Well, there again, you have this hiring hierarchy. There are free resources that you can go to. You've got the Service Corps of Retired Executives. You've got the Small Business Administration. You've got small business development centers at local colleges. There are a bunch of organizations you can go to, and they don't charge you anything. They do everything for free. So you know, and then you can outsource to a third party, and then you can hire when revenue is justified. But one of that first tier is something that I think you might want to explore. So I know, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. They have a small business development center there, but there are a couple in our region. And so I actually was an intern between my first and second year at the Wharton School of Business. I was an intern at the Small Business Development Center, providing technical consulting services to local businesses in Philadelphia. And so, and then entrepreneurs will think, well, I don't want to, an undergrad who has no experience and, what can it, it's just like, well, the Small Business Development Center at Wharton hired MBA students. I was an MBA student. I had worked for 11 years before I went back and got my MBA. And I had been a marketing executive for Xerox and AT&T in those 11 years. So, you got the same, you got me on a project, you got the same resources that you would get going to McKinsey or Deloitte or Bain or Boston Consulting Group hiring, them because I ended up working for Deloitte when I left Wharton, so but you got me as a resource for free. So going to a small business development center is something that I think you might want to think about because again, you can get a student with real work experience for free to help you with marketing.
I don't know if you have time for a quick story. When
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
absolutely.
had, I had a business, we worked mostly with nonprofits, which explained people at, so the business lasted 8 or 9 years. We had to close. After the business closed, a friend of mine who worked at LaSalle University
Hmm.
invited me to be part of a small business development center and be a consultant when
Yeah,
they had one. They don't
yeah,
have. So I worked with him and others as a consultant. Tim, but why would you want me to be a consultant for SBDC? My business didn't make it.
right, right.
And he said, precisely. Because folks come in with these rose colored glasses, and you can at least, you don't have to rain on their parade,
Yeah,
but you can. So I don't want to prong this beyond your interest. One of the things that happened with me is people would come in and say, and I would ask them why they want to start a business in the first.
right.
And they would say, well, I want to be my own boss. I don't want to work for someone else. I'm
Yeah,
not. So I would say, so you think that you aren't going to have any bosses in your new business? And they would say, yeah, I'm going to be the boss. What do you think your customers will be?
Yeah.
And they would sometimes do a double take. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're reporting to them. If you're if you have customer orientation, you're reporting to them.
Right.
They're your lifeblood. And so that's a simple thing to say, but uh, I think that's good advice. LaSalle doesn't have one of these centers anymore, but I think Temple does. And
Yeah.
well, I think I know the man who's the director there. Maybe it's worth a visit to them to talk
Yeah. Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. I mean, I would meet with them, introduce yourself, tell them, show them the product, all of your books, tell them, that you need some help marketing. Tell, based on this conversation, some of the directives that you may decide or directions you may decide to go down. Give them again, give them a narrow scoped project, and see what happens. You know,
Great, Jeff. Sometimes the things you know a little bit about, you don't think of. I mean, just because you
right?
know about them, it doesn't mean that, oh, wait a minute, I should have thought of that. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
so I told you I taught marketing, right? And now
Yes.
I was an SBDC consultant for 3.
Okay. There you go. Well, I learned something new about you today, so I didn't know that.
Well,
You've never brought that up in a previous conversation.
this is such a wonderful friendship for me. I can't tell you enough. But those 2 suggestions are worth following up on.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I've kept you for quite a while, and I'm sure you got other things to do, and I
Oh,
don't want
wait,
your wife coming in on the screen chastising me for holding you up. So we're gonna kind of wrap this up, but I wanted to kind of transition into, if you could articulate for me, what do you want to do from here? What do you think you're going to do from here? And then I also want to, part of why I'm doing this podcast, the problem solving podcast format, is I actually want to bring people back, and hear the story of what you tried based on the conversation, what you tried and
so
how it worked. So we can hear how it worked, because I think that will be valuable for other entrepreneurs to one, again, and thank you for being kind enough to share, the problems that you're having, because I think they're universal problems for authors. But then being willing, and I hope you're willing to come back with the audience and share what you've tried and how it's worked.
I'd be glad to do that. And you can count on, probably, I'm looking at a couple months down the line,
Okay.
or the Fiverr option and the SPDC. I think Widener has an SPDC as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. Yes.
I have to figure that out, but I can go to one of them. I can look them up on the web and see if I can get an appointment. Probably after the next book comes out, because it'll give me more to talk to them about, and
Right.
maybe focusing on one book in particular.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, thank you again for being willing to help others who may be struggling to overcome some similar obstacles. It doesn't matter to me when you come back. Whenever you think it's right to come back, let's reach back out to me, and let's schedule a time for you to come back on and give a postmortem of what you tried, what worked, what didn't. What the impact's been. I'm sure you're already a successful author. You're just going to have more success to share with us. So I look forward to that conversation whenever it happens in the future.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to staying in touch.
All right, sounds good.